Just as a note, this is the concluding story to a 5-part story. Please go back and listen to episodes 34.1, 35.2, 38.2, and last week's 39.2 if you'd like the background on the Global Confederation, Academy Prime, the Smock and their invasion, and the Quad of Primrose 33. If you just want to come along for the ride today, by all means, let's get started. Sonbol, an original multi-part short story by Jared I. McGee. Part 5. The Smock. When the alarms went off at 0300, we all leapt into action. At this point in our training, we were used to these little surprise drills that were arranged to keep us on our toes and ready for action. We still had 5 months until the threatened invasion, but keeping keen on our skills was, of course, extremely important. Primrose 33 was dressed and moving toward the training bay in less than 4 minutes. We sprinted around the corner to find the bay locked. We tried the doors just to be sure. They were locked. Something was wrong. Anton held up a finger as we began to chat in hushed voices, wondering why we were the only ones there and why the doors were still sealed. Shh! Listen up. Do you hear that, mates? He asked. The distant thuds sounded like the fireworks they used to put on down by the riverside back home. We always did our own smaller family light show, but we could always still hear the larger town show off in the distance. The thick July air dampening the explosions somewhat, but never fully muffling them. We were in the heart of Prime. If we were really hearing explosions, that meant Dublin must be. Dear God, it's an attack, they've come early, Barb all but whispered. All right, crew. We always knew this might be a possibility, I said. Now, we've trained for this, maybe not to the extent that we'd have liked, but we have always known that was going to be the case no matter when the Smock showed up. Let's saddle up, roll out, and save the fucking world, eh? Quiet mumbles of agreement came to me, and we set out running to the real ship bay. En route, we ran into several more crews that had, by this point, also put 2 and 2 together and were headed toward the ship bay as we were. As we made our way through Prime's halls, I cursed my idiocy. Of course, these would-be conquerors wouldn't tell us the actual date for the beginning of the invasion. Clearly, I had read far too many romanticized stories of ancient Rome and the virtues of war and wanting to fight on equal terms. War is hell. That's what more modern minds have asserted. I had allowed myself to be lulled to sleep as if my brain were suffering from early caducity. We were about 16 when we made it to the pre-flight deck. 3 other quads had joined Primrose 33 as we jogged to the fight. We all burst into the pre-flight and began zipping our flight suits on over our regular daily gear, our varying colors disappearing behind inky blacks and highlighted by slate grays. Some other captain of one of the other 3 quads was done first, and she hit the switch for the blast door to open the flight deck, screaming above all the alarms and general din, Oak Grove 17 to me! Her words were cut off. She and one other member of her crew that had already begun to heed her call even before she fully voiced it were consumed by a ball of flames spurting out. The other 14 of us leapt back for the sides of the room, crashing into walls and one another, but avoiding the flames that pushed in and licked the middle of the room. Some brave soul clamped down on the button, shuttering the blast door. It was Anton. God bless Anton. We were unprepared. From the beginning, we had known that our degree of preparation would never quite be enough. There was only so much the Earth could do on such a small time limit, and with such a ragtag group of volunteers meant to be the saviors of this world. Now, with Academy Prime's entire fleet aflame, I began to realize just how much hubris we'd been displaying these last few months. Everyone looked wide-eyed at one another, blinking, breathing heavily. I realized I had to speak up. Everyone, listen up. We have got to get into the city proper. The Smock will be hitting central Dublin hardest, if for no other reason than the symbolic value of decimating the symbolic capital of the Global Confederation. I say we grab what weapons we can find and go give them the fight of their lives as guerrilla fighters on the ground. How about it? Let's do some killing. Cheers bounced off the blackened walls. The different quads bumped fists, shook hands, and ran in different directions. The different crews sprinted apart, the lights and sounds of Prime's alarm systems playing off the smoke, turning the halls into a grim dance party. It wasn't 10 minutes until we found ourselves pounding the pavement towards central Dublin. We all had our sidearms, so that was somewhat comforting, but we did not find the massive assault-style weapons we'd hoped to find on our way out of the now alight Prime. On the way out, we came to understand that we were nowhere near the weapons depot, and there would be no weapons to simply snag from emergency preparedness lockers. So, Anton grabbed a fire axe. Barb took up one of the supposedly decorative spears. I found a discarded hand blaster that had just a bit more juice than our sidearms. I did not pick up a second weapon. I knew we would come across weapons in the field. Some discarded from fear, some discarded amid the throes of death. I didn't hold my companion's need for a second weapon against him. I understood. Prime was burning. Dublin was burning. Earth was burning. As soon as we were a mile or two into our jog, we began to see the destruction. The smog had leveled entire sections of Dublin, and the assault continued. The near hour it takes to walk Dublin shrunk and went by quicker than I could have imagined on the morning runs we used to do for PT. This run was a blur. The only feature of the landscape I happened to notice was the abundance of churchyards, their Celtic knots and crosses rising up austere and beautiful. God's acres. Several of them. They will burn too, when the smock's destructive gaze turns back outward from the city again. Thoughts of God abandoning us leap up in my mind, but I push them down and keep pushing forward. The moment we hit Dublin proper, we knew we had already lost the city. And with Prime and the GC's de facto headquarters there, that meant that the rest of the planet's defense centers didn't stand a chance. The quad made its way from ruined street corner to overturned dumpster to massive rubble pile, staying hidden from the worrying ships that were flying so damn low, so damn quietly, so damn fast. Seeing the way these smaller fighter aircraft move, I knew that this war was a foregone conclusion. Barb, Anton, and High's eyes let me know that they all had come to the same realization. As expected, we picked up some discarded shipbuster rifles and ionic grenades off the charred bodies of what we assumed were fallen comrades from the GC's fighting force. As we closed in on the Liffey, we heard the sounds of battle. Men and women crying, smock ships whisper whirring by, and pulsing guns making a chumph, chumph noise. Both far too quiet for the devastation they were raining down on the city. Those sounds were eerie. "All right, crew," I said with as much courage and resolve as I could muster. "This is what we've trained for. It's looking bad, but I'm going in. I won't hold it against you if you don't want to come. This looks like it might just be a done deal." Steel, angry eyes from Anton. Backhand slap to my chest from Barb, accompanied by an eye roll. Nearly imperceptible shaking of her head from High. Disappointment coming at me. The quad would go together then. We put our scavenged weapons into active mode, nodded at one another one time, and we ran toward the flames and the screams and the whisper whirring and the chunkf chunkf. We quickly found a flipped and burnt-out bus to use as cover. 15 collective shots in, and we had taken down 4 of those bastard ships. We did not acknowledge it to one another. We did not celebrate. We just kept firing. I wanted to see what these things looked like. I'm betting Hai wanted to see them even more than I did. She'd religiously studied their biology for months now, all in hopes that we might find something in that biology to down them. Sure, biological weapons was a dirty term on Earth when discussing human-on-human warfare, but with our species facing enslavement, if not full extinction, all was fair. But we had no such luck. The little bubble pods on top of the all but nondescript ovular ships were tinted. All we saw was deep gray bordering on black shaded glass. If hopes and dreams were, well, I could not think of that old adage my mother used to say. That scared me more than these aliens did. God, I wonder if she is in the city today. Maybe if she was out at the house, she'll have a chance to run and hide. God, please be with her. Only 20 minutes in, our larger weapons charges were beginning to fizzle, but we'd taken down at least 12 fighters, if not 15. My counting started to be off a bit. Not bad for 4 regular Janes and Joes with a drip of training. Impressive? Yes. But it got us noticed. We began taking heavy fire. The maelstrom was raining down on us now. Pieces of the gutted bus chipped away. We were pinned down. But at least that meant some of the other fighters had a bit of a respite from the hellfire. Maybe they could reload. Maybe they could get away to fight again after some licking of wounds and rearming. Maybe... A scream. I turned to my left. The last barrage from the Smock had made the entire city block shudder, and it had also hit our cover. A 2-foot piece of jagged bus frame was lodged through the abdomen of Barb. Anton echoed her scream. How long had they loved each other? Just because I was dumb enough not to see it didn't mean it hadn't been going on for some time. My God, what was happening around us? Anton looked up at me, his eyes bloodshot with rage and sickening sorrow. Mack, get the fuck out of here. Barb, she and I have some alien fuckers to kill. You and Hai retreat. Rally the troops. With your planning and her smarts, you two can wipe them the fuck out yet. Anton, we aren't gonna leave you two. You know that. Mack. Leave. This is what we want now. This is what we want, right, Barb? With Anton's words came a nod and a weak smile from the expert fighting woman. Man. Barb was grinning even as she bled out with a piece of bus skeleton through her middle. What could we do? Hai and I didn't give them hugs or handshakes. We did not say goodbye. We simply gave them a nod and left to Anton propping Barb up and preparing for the next flyby from the Smock. Hai and I heard the two screaming in Irish together as they fired away. An explosion cut those voices off. They did not start again. Hai and I ran in a strange, focused yet blurred sprint through the streets of Dublin. We'd been on the north side of the Liffey, it would seem. I only knew this because we crossed one of the many bridges that were now charred and unrecognizable and had ended up in the bustling Temple Bar. I choked a laugh and pointed out the surroundings to Hai. Any other time of day, this place would be thick with tourists and local drinkers and workers alike. Today, The streets were aflame and in disarray. The place was barely discernible as the place I'd come to enjoy on a few of my nights off from Prime from time to time. Hyde did not seem as amused. She pulled me off the main street toward a pub we'd gone to a couple times with Barb and Anton. Once inside, I finally felt it was safe enough to take a moment to breathe and sit down and talk about our next move. "Hi, darling. What's the plan? We both know you're smarter than me. Rank and duty assignment be damned. What's our next move?"
"We enjoy each other here at the end of our city, Mack,"
she said in her soft, loving voice that was generally only reserved for me during private moments far from prying eyes and reaching ears. All I could do was blink at her, dumbfounded. She wanted to give up? That's not the High I knew. Because High was smarter than me, she could see the confusion in my eyes. She unzipped part of the top of her black flight suit and pulled up her uniform that was under it, showing me a piece of rebar lodged just above her left hip. The black of the flight suit had hidden it from me, but her clothes were saturated with blood. The fool I was, I thought it was sweat. She was as good as dead. I had no med kit. She had run with me as if nothing were wrong, spurting blood along the way. She had fought alongside her quad with dignity and bravery. She had been the greatest warrior a person could ever hope to be in the face of inevitable loss and death. Still, she was as good as dead. I went to speak. "Hi, I can't..." I was going to say that I could not go on without her, but my voice broke. For the first time in a very long time, I started to cry. She held me. She held me as she sat bleeding out on a dirty floor of a pub that once had held such life. She pet me and hushed my crying. "Shh, shh, my gra. We are together. That's all that matters. We love one another. That is all that matters." After a few moments of sobbing and High's comforting, I calmed my breathing and looked back up at the love of my life. I thought back to my first impressions of her. Last, I was greeted by a pale green goddess of a woman. Her sea green eyes framed by velvety curls of brown. Her body was toned and tight, but not in the sleek, harsh way of Barbara's and not in the bulky, corded way of Anton's. She smiled widely but wasn't quick to meet my gaze. She was shy then. Hyacinth Rose Flowers, engineer, master electrician, astrophysicist, and communications liaison, among many other things. That she was gorgeous was enough to take me aback. That she'd apparently qualified in every testing subject, save hand-to-hand combat, was an added bit to knock me on my heels. And that name of hers? Wow. Hyacinth Rose Flowers. I snickered a bit, which brought her tucked chin up and her eyes shot up to meet mine and our handshake intensified. Hyacinth High Rose Flowers, 24. Trained at Boston Unit 27C. Ranked Omega, the highest of the high. Assigned to Primrose 33. My love. Ranked an expert at everything. Oh, the life we would have led had we had the chance.
"You look so deep in thought, Robert. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me stories. Make this special."
She purred, showing no weakness in her voice, though I knew her strength must have almost fully drained out of her by now. So I did. The city roared as it fell outside, but here, with her, I kept my voice serene and warm. I told her that I'd been thinking of our first meeting. That elicited a painful giggle and an admonishment for making her laugh. I went on, relating our past to her, the soft smile never faltering from her lips, her eyes staying alert. I moved on to the future I wanted to have with her. I wanted her to meet my mother. I wanted to marry her in a massive wedding with far too many guests, something that I said I'd never take part in. Yet that's what came to me now that the possibility was becoming an impossibility there on the pub floor. The wedding would be draped in dark silver and thick honeyed gold. Those were her dream colors. She smiled even more, even deeper, realizing that I'd been listening when she'd said as much. Her eyes were droopy now. They were anything but alert. I wanted to be the father of her children. We had to have at least 2. I'd always thought only children were weird ones. We also had to have at least 1 son. I had to pass on my middle name to my firstborn son. That was the McAllister tradition. I wanted her to be the primary breadwinner. She had such talent, such intelligence. She would undoubtedly be the one to find bigger, better jobs that could change the world. Plus, she needed intellectual stimulation like most people needed air, even more so than me. Without it, she couldn't be happy. I'd stay home with the kids when they were little. Then, we'd get me back into work after. I wanted her. I wanted to see what she would accomplish. I wanted to grow old with her. The both of us seeing the pains and kinks of our bodies multiplying, but still adoring one another for who and what we were. I wanted her. I wanted her. I only wanted her. I only want you, hyacinth rose flowers. In response, she breathed out, I love you. Then her chest failed to rise. My tears came back again, hot and heavy. My body thrummed with pain, both from the battle back north of the river and with the pain of losing her. I was right. This, she and I, that's the whole point of fighting these invaders. Without this, humanity just isn't. I continued to hold her as night began to creep through the streets of Dublin. The sound of genocide never ceased. My flight suit had become mourning sables, appropriate for this end to my life in all its facets. My anxiety and fear were non-existent. Being dead already seemed a superpower. When the dark was pitch, and the only light came from sentry ships hovering through the streets and occasionally firing on a wayward man or woman who had been bravely scouring the streets for whatever odd reasons took them out of their hidden places of refuge, I lied Hyacinth down on the floor. I collected chunks of rubble in and around the pub, and I formed the best grave and memorial I could in the circumstances. I knew I would be back, so the temporary measure was enough for now. I knew I would be back because I would not die anywhere but by her side. I needed to be with her. I did not lie to her when I told her that she was all I wanted. When she was encased in concrete and splintered wood and detritus, I knelt down at the foot of her makeshift grave and prayed for her. And I prayed for my mama. And I prayed that God would give me the strength to find what I need to bury my love properly and kill a few more of these vile beasts before my time came. I only want you, hyacinth rose flowers, I repeated to her. I only want you. I was right. These relationships, this love between people is the point of fighting. Without this, humanity is not human. What does that make me now? I don't know. Maybe I'm a monster. Maybe a monster can fight monsters better than we poor humans could. Maybe these Smock's partial success created their potential downfall. I had taken a scrap of High's uniform that I tied into a necklace and put under my black flight suit. I touched it once, rose from her grave, and walked into the Dublin night, leaving my humanity there, buried with her. Thank you for listening to the fifth and concluding part of Sonbol, titled The Smock. The ambient noise track in the background of the story is from freesound.org and comes from user Sklolex. It is being used under a CC0 1.0 Universal Public Domain Dedication license. The music you hear was taken from the Free Music Archive. The track comes from Lee Rosevere's album 5 Minutes Meditations and is titled 5 Minute Meditations Album Mix with Alpha Waves. Mr. Rosevere's track is being used under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial 4.0 International License. Well, that does it for prose this week, and it wraps up the adventures of Primrose 33. I truly hope that you enjoyed getting to know Anton, Barb, High, and Mack. We will be back together in 2 weeks' time to leap back into the world of stories. Until then, love those around you, tell them that you do, and embrace this life as it is, always stranger than fiction.